The communication, marketing and advertising sector is actually an industry, and it has rules, it has schools that train a lot of new students every year, it has systems and millions of people working on it. And if we do not understand how communication works, we will always struggle to pass our message. So with this video, we will dig in the size of the industry first and see how communication in the public sector relates to the global world of marketing. Let's start with one small industry, the music industry, which globally in the world is estimated to be $17.3 billion a year. Why is it interesting to know what the music industry is doing? It's because it's an industry that is trying to catch the attention of people and make them listen as much as possible of music, right? So we're talking about concerts, we're talking about Spotify and any sort of music platform you use. The radio industry is very similar to the music industry, and that's about $27.1 billion a year. Why is it interesting to relate the two industries together? It's because they obviously have the same material and they are playing on the audio side of things. An industry I like to put side by side is an industry we tend to consider a little bit dead, and that's the book publishing industry. $60 billion a year. That's quite massive, right? It's almost the double of these two industries together. And I have a question for you. What do you think is the size of the film industry compared to the book publishing industry? Is that bigger or is that smaller? I would tend to think naturally you would think it's larger, right? And it is. It's $89 billion a year of revenues generated, all the blockbusters, independent movies, everything together. But the video game industries in the last decade became even bigger. So we have here a video game industry at $115 billion a year of revenues. And you have almost every entertainment you could have in your life represented here. But we're missing still one very big proponent of entertainment, TV. And TV is now estimated to be $467 billion a year. The 5 largest entertainment industries are on this particular slide. So you will obviously think about it now as quite a massive amount of money and business. Let's continue. The sport industry, we had the World Cup recently. Sport industry, $600 billion a year. The sport industry has one particular objective, is to retain your attention as long as possible so that it can sell advertising. So your attention is exchanged for advertising time. You're following this sport match, it's great, but during that time you are sold products. So the marketing, communication, public relation industry all together, what does this represent? Well, that's this huge part of the chart, $1.2 trillion a year. We are talking about an industry so massive that is bigger than all the entertainment sectors all together. That's enormous. And the reason why it's so big is because all these entertainment sectors need at one point to promote their products. And by promoting their products, they actually feed the marketing, the communication, the advertising industry. When we work in communication, we are part of this industry. So we have to understand the complexity of it, how it relies on expertise, on real skills, so that we can make a better work. Let's dig into the advertising sector now and relate a little bit more to the public sector. So at the bottom right corner, we have the EU budget. That's the proper ratio, $165 billion a year. And the very small spot you see in this white square is the actual EU communication budget, $600 million spent a year trying to talk to citizens, to people about what we do in Brussels. In blue, the US communication budget, about 3 times the EU one. We have a larger country in the US and also more promotion in general of their laws so that people really understand what happens and what programs are available as citizens. In yellow, Procter & Gamble, the largest advertiser in the world. We are talking about $7.2 billion spent a year on brands such as Always or Ariel, Gillette, Oral-B. You know the brands. Usually you don't know that Procter & Gamble is actually the company producing them, because each of these brands is spending an amazing amount of money to try to push their existence into your mind when you're going to the supermarket or when you're going in the street and think maybe you should buy one particular brand of toothbrush. The PR industry, that's the next in line. The PR industry, or influencing the press so that the press talks about your topic, that's about $15 billion a year. And if you look at the names on this particular industry, we see players who are very present in Brussels. Weber Shandwick or Fleischmann-Hillard or Ketchum, Burston Marsteller, all these companies who are working on PR, and they are part of this industry. In dark blue, social network, guess which one? Facebook. Facebook is an advertising network that offers a free service, which is connect with your friends and learn about the world, but in exchange, sell your attention to advertisers, right? So we have about $40 billion of revenue every year generated by Facebook, reselling our attention to advertisers. And in light blue, Google. Google is providing maybe one of the most useful services in the world on the internet. You can look for anything. Well, in exchange of that, they earn $100 billion every year by reselling our attention. So here you have a little bit of more information and a granular perspective on what the industry is. And you still see a lot of red space. So imagine how many more actors are present in that field. I'd like to compare that to the public sector communication, which is part of this chart I just showed. The UK spend about $9 per inhabitant. The UK has a very big tradition in advertising. They are extremely skilled. And you can see that they are spending the most money of all countries in the world, actually. The EU, in comparison, is spending 9 times less, with about $1 per inhabitant. So we are trying to convince people of what we do great with quite a low budget, actually. It relates to Canada, $1.6 per inhabitant. And the culture is, if you're a government, you don't spend too much to talk to people about the things you do well, because that's not the European tradition to oversell what you're doing. On the contrary, Australia and the US, you can see that they're spending much more per inhabitant. And thanks to that sort of spending, their population is very well aware of the programs they have put in place and the services that are available to them. And now, what does it mean for the European elections? It's coming in May 2019. Well, recommendation in this case. The benchmark in the industry is to spend about 10% of your annual turnover in communication. The most performing brand in the world, like Salesforce, for instance, or like Apple, would spend even more of their annual turnover in communication. But in general, what we see is between 3 and 10%. And in Brussels, in particular, we are usually under 3%. And why is it necessary to slightly increase your budget, especially if you're aiming at the European elections? It's because the more you spend, the better you are. And the better you are, and the more people recognize you. So it becomes much easier to defend whatever position you have once people already know you. For example, if you have a 1 million euros turnover or budget for an NGO, 10% is 100K, 100,000 euros. That's more or less one full-time employee and 50,000 euros of budget you can spend on hiring freelancers or service providers or buying tools. That's not that much. Or it's about 2 full-time employees with 10,000 euros of additional budget. So even with 10% of your entire turnover per year, you are still only having 1 or 2 employees working on that. And the rule is simple. The larger the spending, the more your organization will be known. If you don't spend in your communication, no one will know what you're doing. So spending more means it's easier to find members when you are an association. It's easier to convince stakeholders when you need to influence them, or policymakers in particular if you're lobbying here. It's easier to get press coverage or attract good employees. Good employees join the brands they like already. If you do not have the budget, and that will be the case for some of the viewers, well, you will have to be much more creative and strategic. So you will have to follow probably this series from the beginning to the end and really think about solutions where you don't need to spend money on providers or to hire people to do the work in-house, because you will have to do the work yourself. If you follow carefully, my promise to you is that you will understand a lot more about communication and how to do that effort with the less possible budget. Thank you very much. and see you next week for the next video.